Wow, do I have a lot to share with you today, and I think you'll like it because what I'm going to do is tell you about the times that I have run D&D campaigns. Yes, I have DM'd, but I am no Matt Mercer. I am not Taz. I'm not the Adventure Zone, even though I listen to them and I love them. Maybe let's just say I wish that I could be as good as those someday. But I really just want to share with you how a beginner DM approached Dungeons and Dragons and what I had or what I wish I'd had when I ran these campaigns for my students. So to get started, I ran the starter set. This was the very first campaign that I held for my students, and this was going on 4 or 5 years ago, I think, because it ran right up until the start of the pandemic. And I ran the starter set, had a great time with a really, really wonderful group of students. And then we moved on to Dungeons and Dragons, Stranger Things, had a fantastic time with that campaign, and I was prepping, in the middle of prepping for the Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons kit when the pandemic hit, and I was not able to continue my D&D group at the college I was teaching at. So that's why I've got these box sets and starter sets, and at the very bottom you see it's the Essentials kit. All four of these are my very first suggestion. When you're playing for the first time, or you're playing with new players, or you're playing with people who just want to have kind of a casual, lax game that's not super strict on this and that and that and that, and you have essentially everything you need to succeed in a D&D campaign, grab one of these boxes. You get your starter set, right? You open it up and it's got your actual guide. It tells you, you can see, so I've got all my tabs in it where I kept my notes. Lost Mind of Fandelver. And so it's got the rules index, but all the creatures in the back. The appendix tell you how to do everything. And then every single location is in here with what happens. I love this because these are my students' handwriting, and I actually can go through and see their character sheets. When you look inside the Rick and Morty, I'll show you those close up. Everything's filled in. It's like for super, super beginners. So I've got all of this in here, and in addition to this book, you also have your rule book. And I think a student gave it to me, but it might actually be part of the box set. I'm not sure. But there's actually this D&D map that is included, and it's got 4 locations. And you open it up and you'll see that there are 2 more inside there. So I'm not sure, we didn't actually use this, which I'm surprised that we didn't. But this has an entire adventure. It's super fun. It lets players be exactly who they want to be and take this adventure. Now, with the Stranger Things, it's got a very strong Stranger Things theme with the Demogorgon that shows up, and it's just super, super highly thematic. And you get a cool mini. You get the mini in there too, which is really fun because it's great playing with your little miniatures on your maps. And then again with that Rick and Morty, the character sheets are already filled out. And again, there's the same thing with the book that tells you what all of your adventures are. It tells you what your scenarios are, walks you through how to do everything. And then the Essentials kit is something entirely different. It's not the same as the starter kit. They are in the same world, but they don't have the same stories. So I recommend first getting one of these kind of starter kits, these essential kits, these themed, if you like Rick and Morty or you like Stranger Things. For me, those were 2 huge draws for my students. So not only the D&D name, but having it paired with Rick and Morty and or having it paired with Stranger Things was just like, it put it right over the top. And so I found these to be so easy to use. I had never DM'd before, and it just kind of walked me through it. And they come with a screen as well, so if you don't already have your own screen as the DM, you have a screen here, and so that's really helpful. But I liked these so much. and it was easy to use, easy to navigate, and fortunately for me, I had some really experienced role players in my group who would kind of help me whenever I was looking for a stat or looking for what happens in what situation. But with 5th edition, it is just so easy to play, and these are definitely an essential if you want to run a short campaign. And when I mean short, I mean you can probably play it in 4 longish sessions, maybe longer than that, maybe shorter, depending on how long your session is. But you're going to have these kind of nice, fulfilling, exciting, fun adventures if you take advantage of these box sets. So please give these a chance. As you can tell, we've got 4 of them, and I haven't had the chance to play with the 2 on the bottom, but I would love to hear your thoughts about those in the comments. So moving on to my next suggestion, and something that you really should consider having when you play D&D with a group. Maybe you're beginning. I'm going to just keep coming back to that point because for me, starting was kind of intimidating. I had played as a gamer, as a role player, but I had never DM'd. That's always Lewis's job. He loves it, and he's been role playing since a long time ago. I won't tell you how old he is, but he's been playing a long time. And so the next thing I would say is get some dice for your players. Now, I was playing with students, and I didn't want to assume that they had any experience or require that they have to bring anything to my sessions. I wanted it to be super accessible for players. So what I did was I got this thing called Cup of Wonder. That's the one that I bought, and it has 5 sets of dice in it. If I can actually get this off. I wonder... Okay, so once you get this off, and you open this up and it kind of opens up like a little treasure chest, and then you've got a cup and it has all the dice in it, 5 sets in here, and I would have my students pour them out and pick the color that they wanted, and they had an entire set of dice to play with, which is fantastic, and they felt like they got their same color every week, and it was just fantastic. So I recommend this for your players. Make sure that you get the Cup of Wonder or something like this. I think it's just really cute and thematic, and it's super easy to pack up again. Everyone dumps their dice in the cup and you flop the little lid down. For me, I've got my bag of dice, and I love having like just weird dice. You know, as most role players, you feel like your dice run hot, cold, weird, and you want to like have some backups, and you don't want anyone else to touch your dice. I'm like that too. And so I just got a whole bunch of weird dice. These were some that I found in there. I've got some doggy dice. I've got some really cool heavy metal dice, and they're really heavy. I think you could hurt somebody with them, but I like them. I've got some neato 4-siders here. Then I've got an even better 4-sider here, where when it lands, it actually tells you the number on the top, because so many 4-sided dice, I have come to realize, confuse my students when I play games with them in the classroom. 4-siders just always, you don't know where to look, you don't know which number it is, and so I bought these dice. I think it was a Kickstarter. I backed where I got to just have these super easy, it lands, boom, it's a 4. It's so obvious, the 4 is right there on the top. So I really like having these dice in here. Some dice that have just really giant numbers. So if students need dice, they can have dice, but then I've just got my really fun pretty dice, and I love 14, not bad. And you'll notice I'm rolling in this tray. One thing that I didn't have when I ran my campaign at school was a tray. And if you've been watching the channel, you know that I actually made this, not from scratch, but I repurposed it last winter. This was a wooden tray that my father-in-law gave us, and I stained it. It was just like that kind of untreated wood, but we got a bunch of fruits and nuts and things in here, and so I treated it, put on some bumpers on the bottom so that it would not it would stay still and be even, and then I ended up making all of these different colored felt squares. And so if I want red, I've got red in here, I've got the yellow, I've got the blue, and so whatever you want your dice to kind of, that's stinky. Whatever you want your dice to roll against, you have it, but you can put it out for students, you can put it out for your players, and you can say like, you know, here, use this is easy, it stays in the tray, your dice don't go rolling off the table, you don't make a whole bunch of noise. I think there was one semester where we were put in the library or near the library, and we were making a lot of noise, and dice was one contributing factor to the noise. And so you might want to kind of prevent a lot of the noise for whatever reason, but also just keep your dice in one place. And so, I don't know, I went home this past holiday and realized that my family still plays by the rules of if your dice goes off the table and onto the floor, it still counts. And I was aghast. But I began playing that way because everyone else was playing that way. So, you know, it'll help keep the dice on the table and not in the floor where dice don't count and they don't belong, in my opinion. Chime in on that in the comments because, yeah, dice floor? No, there's no way. I have my really cool player mat under here. This is my green dragon. I would take this everywhere with me if I could. I didn't have this when I was playing with my campaign. I think it would also just make it easier for me to roll dice. I was having a hard time behind my screen where I was rolling dice and it was hitting pages and it was hitting binds and books and it was hitting pencils and stuff. And I think that if I had this, I would be able to put my notes on one side and have like a nice soft surface that I could use to roll my dice. So if you have a player mat or something like this, see my cutie dragon? Oh, it's so cute. You can find one of these at any of your friendly local gaming stores or online at a lot of game stores that have great sales. I got this at a super, super great sale online, and I got my husband a cool yellow dragon. So that's my next thing I didn't have, along with this kind of dice holder, my rolling machine. Another thing that I really wish I'd had, I can't even begin to tell you how helpful it would have been for my students to feel like they were fully immersed in these stories, is to have something that's not your generic grid. Now, I had a wonderful student who donated this to the D&D group. This is just your regular playmat, right? So, oh my gosh, this is the last mission we played on. Oh my gosh, you can see it. Oh, it takes me back. Wow, okay, memories, right? So this one you have your square grid, and on the back is the hex grid. And so this is a nice size mat. You can roll it up. It's wet, dry, erase. It's really, really great. It doesn't necessarily put you in the world. It doesn't immerse you. It doesn't give you much color, and it doesn't give you much like indication of terrain. So what I'm going to suggest, and what I would have used in a heartbeat, is the immersive battle maps by Yarrow Studios. This is the book. Now I'm going to have to push some things out of the way. Okay, so don't mind me for a minute. Okay, this is the book. I'm going to put it up next to me. Okay, this is the book and this is me. I'm a normal sized human, okay? And this is how tall it is. And I will tell you it weighs a lot. I don't know how much it weighs. It's so hefty. Now, the cool thing about this is you can open it up to any of the pages and you have got a full flat, there's no seam in the middle, grid, 1-inch grid for all the things that you want. Now, this is just, to me, the coolest. I would have used this with all of my scenarios. There are big open blank ones like you saw with the ocean. There are the same thing with the forest. There's these shipwrecks. Oh, this one in particular. It's got trails, kind of like a labyrinth, inside of this like hedge maze. And you've got a central area. You've got a lot of places that are lit or unlit. These maps are insanely well done. They're hand drawn. You can use dry and wet erase markers on these maps. And I just honestly can't get enough of it, because what it does for me is it makes me feel like I can use this with any campaign. I can use this with any of my role-playing books, any of Lewis's that he has upstairs, because he's been stealing my bookshelves on the main floor. Okay, the game basement has moved, has migrated, but guess what's on the main floor? No board games, role-playing games. Just shelves and shelves of role-playing games. And to play all of those games, we're gonna use this. Like, how can we not use this? This is perfect. And it's generic enough to use for any campaign, any setting. And there's a wonderful table of contents that tells you essentially what it is: lava fields, dungeon floors, undiscovered ice lands, etc. So for me, having this, having a place for my students and players to roll their dice, making sure that they each have a set of dice and that you don't have to invest in something. Because again, I just wanted this to be an equitable and equal opportunity situation for my students. No cost for them. I was providing all of this. I've got my set with my cool weird dice. This is what you need. Oh yeah, and my player mat. So for me, I think you could, with just a few key pieces of equipment and resources and things like your dice and your tray and your map system and at least one or two of these kits, you could run your campaign, have a fantastic time with your group, and kind of just like get better as a storyteller, get better as a role player. Because when I came at it from my point of view, I know you probably know this because you've been doing D&D or role-playing for much longer than I have, but I think there's something really wonderful about playing with a group of people who, of course, if you're a good DM, you essentially are on their team. You want them to have a good experience. It doesn't mean everything's easy or that you win everything, but you want them to have a great time. And there's just something about creating an experience for someone else and watching them have a great time and having these moments that are just forever, and to see things that just take you back. When I open these kits and I see my students' handwriting and I see their characters and I remember their names, and then I remember the one time that Darren sliced a spider open from the underneath as he slid under and just severed the belly of this giant spider. It's just fun. It's just so much fun. And this immersive map will help your players, in my case my students, just fall into the world so much easier. And it's so easy to write on it, dry erase, wet erase, and you've got it. It's back to the original, right? So it's super easy to use. And honestly, this kind of a book would have blown them away. If I'd opened this book and said, okay, here we are, and I set the scene, we're in Phandalin, we're doing this, they would have just lost it. I mean, I would have. It's kind of cool. So this is the setup. This is what I suggest. Let me know what you think. And let's say you've made it this far. Who knows? And you think that this might be too much still, and you kind of want that D&D experience without putting in hours and hours and hours of work. That's what these two little guys are over here. I've had them sitting here, and you've probably been wondering, what's all that over there? This is 5-minute dungeon. Can't get any shorter than 5 minutes. And this is Dungeon Mayhem, and it's 10 minutes. So if you want a super short dungeon experience, Dungeon Mayhem is essentially a player elimination. You want to attack and kill everyone else and be the last person standing. It is D&D IP, and so you've got these characters. It's Dungeons and Dragons, action-packed card game. Again, you are doing player elimination until you are last person standing, so be aware of that. And then the 5-minute dungeon, though, if you're not so into player elimination, you can do it cooperatively, a chaotic cooperative real-time card game. Boom. 5 minutes, and you can have a fantastic dungeon experience in a super short amount of time. Well, I think I have covered everything I wanted to say. I hope you enjoy, and I hope you get to playing some adventures yourself. Just have a really good time, and know that with just a few key things, you can run a really successful and memorable campaign. Have fun with D&D, have fun with these starter sets, and I'll see you next time.